It's the bye week, and that means we get to go around the league a little bit. A little rare for this show. Let's talk about teams that are doing worse than the Vikings here on the Locked On Vikings podcast.
Ooh-wee! You are Locked On Vikings, your daily Minnesota Vikings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Locked On Vikings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. You can find the Locked On Vikings podcast on Amazon Fire or on Roku. Just download the Locked On Minnesota Sports app. You can find me on Twitter at Luke Braun NFL. You can find the show on Twitter at Locked On Vikings. Of course, I'm your host, your pal, and the kid you copied off in math class. Today's episode is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline.net has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline, where the game starts. So, the Vikings do not play this weekend. Bummer, right? It was fun to watch them win 5 out of 6 games. They will not win this weekend. They won't lose this weekend, though, so you can rest easy. Instead, they're on their bye, and I think this is a good opportunity to talk a little bit about some of the other games. In particular, what should we be rooting for? What should we watch this Sunday? What do we want with all of these games? I mean, it's obvious to say, I hope the Packers lose or whatever, but what else? What about the rest of the game? So we're going to talk about that. Of course, we do have our weekly Friday segments. You betcha, our little Grambling segment. And of course, the bold predictions, which I still did ask you for, and you gave me some very interesting ones for around the league, around the world of sports generally, kind of, too. So we'll get into all of that. But first, a Vikings rooting guide for 2022 Week 7. I went through all the games and kind of sorted them into categories for why we would root for a particular team or not. And let's just talk about it. So the obvious ones are we want other NFC North teams to lose, right? So go Commanders over the Packers, go Patriots over the Bears, go Cowboys over the Lions, or maybe not that last one. Or is it go Cowboys? Maybe it's go Lions. Here's the thing. The Lions are 1-4 and extremely unlikely to contend for the division at this point. They would have to rip off a winning streak. I just do not think that they are capable of. So the Lions or the Cowboys handing them another loss, fairly trivial when it comes to the Vikings. If we do end up blowing it and losing the division, it's almost certainly going to be to the Packers. So go Commanders. We'll get rid of them. And the Bears have a good enough record right now at 2-4. Feels a little better than 1-4. So I feel like the Bears maybe could, climb back into it if they had some miracle. I don't think they're capable of that. I don't think they're good enough to do that, but they're in a position where it's theoretically possible, right? The Lions feel like they're in a hole that's pretty tough to dig out. The Cowboys may actually matter to the Vikings. So let's take the scenario where the Vikings do not win the division, or the scenario where the Cowboys beat the Eagles for the division, which is actually more likely than the former. Right now, according to 538, the Vikings are 83% to win the division. So 17% of outcomes. A little more than 1 out of 6 times the Vikings don't win the division from this particular point. So, still treating both of those outcomes like possible things. But if, for whatever reason, we're competing for seeding with the Cowboys, we want this loss on their record as well. Plus, common games and stuff, we have a win against the Lions. We would love for them to have a loss against the Lions. So, I could justify rooting for the Lions over the Cowboys. It's fairly subjective, though, because it depends on which scenarios you think are more likely. But the other thing is we'll have 2 games against the Lions and only 1 against the Cowboys. If anything comes down to like a strength of schedule or like a strength of victory, it impacts the Vikings more to have a win on the Lions side than the Cowboys side. It's very rare that it ever comes to that, but that's kind of what we're talking about here. So there's that. We've also got a few NFC, AFC teams. We just want other NFC teams to lose in these scenarios just because it helps us that much more. So go Chiefs over the 49ers, go Jags over the Giants, go Chargers over the Seahawks. Again, how likely is that to come up? Whatever. We just want NFC teams to be that much weaker. There are also like NFC within NFC contests. So let's talk about like the relevant NFC teams, like go Panthers over the Bucks, right? Because the Bucks may end up winning the NFC South, and then we would maybe be jockeying for them with playoff seeding. So we would want them to have an extra loss. And then maybe you put the Cowboys here, right? Like go Lions over Cowboys because we may end up jockeying with the Cowboys for seeding or for a wild card spot if it comes to that. So we would want them to have a loss. In the AFC, there's not a lot of reason to care, but there is that strength of victory thing. So deep into the tiebreakers, if all conference record and division record and there's no head-to-head and all that stuff is a tie, you can start going to strength of victory. So teams that you beat. We have not played any of our AFC opponents save the Dolphins so far, so we don't know if this will come up with strength of victory until we play them and beat them. But you would still want them to have a bigger win total because strength of schedule is after strength of victory, so it matters, right? So we want to root for the entire AFC East. We play the entire AFC East and we play the Colts. So go those teams. That means go Jets over the Broncos, go Patriots over the Lions. We already said that, but or over the Bears. There's another reason for that. If you don't care about the Bears at all, right, and you want the Bears to actually better for strength of victory or blah, 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 well, the Patriots are on the schedule too. And that mitigates it a little bit, even though we played the Bears twice. So again, you could make the argument, go Bears, we want better strength of victory, and we know that they're not going to contend for the division anyways. That actually does kind of make sense. Go Dolphins over the Steelers. We have that victory, so that one will actually come into play. And then, of course, go Colts over Titans. That actually only leaves 2 games left that you just can't think of a reason to care about, and that's Texans and Raiders and Browns Ravens. Root for whoever you like. Yeah, you know what? Go Ravens over the Browns. Browns are kind of bad guys this season and for the foreseeable future. And a little bit go Raiders. The Texans are a weird organization, and I don't like them very much. There's your rooting guide. You got to stretch real hard to find a reason for some of those AFC teams, but hey, that's what we are here for. Of course, I want to get into the You Betcha. I want to get into the bold predictions, but first, let me talk to you about defending your home turf with Simply Safe. Simply Safe is a home security option that is a little smarter than just putting an alarm on your door, right? They have 24/7 professional monitoring. They have all sorts of cool AI tools and stuff, and they blanket your home with protection and advanced sensors for every room to make sure that if there is a threat, they know about it, whether that threat is an intruder, like what you usually think of, or a fire or a flood or something like that. Their monitoring experts will use their proprietary response technology to visually confirm when a break-in is real, so you're not going to set the whole thing off with a raccoon and have to deal with the whole thing with the police, and they'll help you get the proper authorities dispatched to your home in the event of a dangerous threat. Don't miss this chance to save big when you protect your home with the best. Get 40% off of your order when you visit simplysafe.com/LockedOnNFL today. Customize the perfect system for your home in just a few minutes. That's simplysafe.com/LockedOnNFL, SIMPLISAFE.com. Go today. There's no safe like Simply Safe. Are we ready to ramble a little bit? It is time for You Betcha, our Minnesota-focused Grambling segment. We do this every Friday. Of course, no Vikings game to do prop bets on, so I just kind of did throughout the week some prop bets I like. And if you follow me into the pits of hell and you end up losing on a Gramble, that's on you, because, boy, I am on a cold streak. Last couple of weeks, I've gone 1 for 4. I said Raheem Mostert would go over 60.5 yards. He didn't get close. I said the Dolphins would go over 20.5 points. I really thought that they'd be able to move the ball more. Quarterback got hurt, so that was part of it. I did hit on the largest lead being under 14.5, and that is the only one that I actually put real money on. And then I also said Thielen would be over 4.5 receptions, which he did not hit. So, rough day. Let's keep it going, though. Let's start in the division with Dallas and Detroit. I like them going under 48.5. I actually talked about this one a little bit with Arif Hassan on the Minnesota Football Party. I think he took it for our betting segment there. I like this bet. Detroit's offense, I think Jared Goff had his moment in the sun, and I think it's over. And Dak Prescott may or may not be back. You might get a Cooper Rush game, in which case 48.5 will be a pretty easy under to hit. You might get a Dak Prescott game. He may or may not be back to full health. He's ready to play again, but I don't know. Is he all the way back? There's also going to be some rust to knock off and stuff. So I see a lot of reasons why this particular one could end up under. And 48.5 is a pretty big over under. So you can still get a reasonable scoring game and still hit on this one. I like Dameon Pierce for the Texans over 65.5. He has hit that every game but one this year. He has been the bell cow for the Houston Texans, and I don't see the Raiders as the team that will hand the Texans one of their worst games of the season. I also like, this is one I thought a lot about, Kansas City and San Francisco. I like San Francisco to score first at plus 104. They're underdogs to do that just because it's Pat Mahomes, right? But the Chiefs have kind of been notoriously slow starters. San Francisco just traded for Christian McCaffrey. So that is I don't know what Kyle Shanahan has planned there, but neither do the Chiefs. And of course, this is kind of a coin flip bet too. So if San Francisco wins the coin flip, maybe there's nothing Patrick Mahomes can do about it. And even so, I still think there are worlds where you can find that, right? And this can be just a field goal too. So I like San Francisco to score first. Of course, it can be just a field goal on the other side. But I don't know. The Chiefs have dug themselves into some holes this season, and under this Andy Reid, Patrick Mahomes thing, they've kind of been notorious for that. So I kind of like shorting that sometimes. And then Jamar Chase, anytime touchdown scorer at minus 119. That feels just like a really good price for Jamar Chase will score a touchdown. Look, sometimes he's getting a little bit of Justin Jefferson treatment. Sometimes he's getting doubled. He's getting capped a lot. But once you get into the red zone, that sort of thing can sort of fall apart and be a lot harder, and you can just throw a fade, whatever. You're going to get one-on-ones. You're going to get weird spacing on the goal line, and he can get touchdowns that way. And plus, he's just a really explosive player. So always down to put my money into Jamar Chase futures. So there's my 4 bets. We'll see how we do as the week rolls on. Those odds and more odds can be found at betonline.net. BetOnline is your one-stop shop for all things gambling. You can find weird props like who will score first in the game, or some player to score a touchdown at any point, and including, just the regular like over-unders that you can find anywhere, but you can find all sorts of weird stuff at BetOnline. And it's not just football. You can bet on baseball, middle of the playoffs right now, right in their semis. Basketball and hockey are coming back. We are reaching one of the kind of holy grails of sports season where all 4 major men's sports are on at the same time. That's really cool. So that's all very exciting. And you can bet on all of it. You can bet weird props, build stuff into weird parlays, and you can also bet right in the middle of a game. You can say, man, the Saints got punched in the mouth by getting a couple of pick sixes. I think they'll come back just a little. You can bet on their second half money line, right? That kind of stuff. Bet in the middle of games. And of course, lines moving all the time. Their live betting apparatus is constantly updating. So you can just log right in middle of third quarter and say, I think the Chiefs will make a comeback and make some money on that, which is a favorite move of mine in the third quarter of Chiefs games if they are trailing. So you can find all of that and much, much more at betonline.net, where the game starts. It is now time to get just a little bold. It is time for the bold prediction segment here for week 7 on the Locked On Vikings podcast. No Vikings game. So we open it up. I open it up to you for any sport, as long as I can check it by the time I record the Friday episode next week, which usually happens sometime Thursday night. So I opened it up to everything. I believe most of this is NFL. Yeah, I think all of this was meant to be NFL, although one of them you didn't specify, so I'm going to give you college anyways, which is the one we are going to start with. But first, we got to go back to the bold predictions from last week. If you want to leave me a bold prediction, I usually put out the call on a Thursday sometime. I'll send out a tweet with a bunch of fire emojis in it, and you can give me your bold predictions. Good bold predictions are creative. They drive at some interesting concept. They give you a sense for how the game would have to play out for that, right? You don't just say like somebody will get 200 yards or somebody will get exactly 69 yards. I get that one a lot because it's the funny number. But something like some of the stuff that I'm going to get to here. And of course, it's got to be a little bit spicy. It's a bold prediction. Such as, we'll go to last week. Last week, we had one from Peter Larson who said that the yardage of the longest play of the game would match the temperature high in Miami on game day. The highest was a 49-yard play. I believe that was a scrambling Tyreek Hill completion from the Miami Dolphins where it was like in garbage time a little bit. So everything was really soft in the middle of the field and he ran upfield a lot. Obviously, it was way above 49. Kyle Slaby said that 4 different players would complete pass attempts in this game. We did not get there. Only 3. But you did have Skylar Thompson and Teddy Bridgewater So you were one trick play away. And that was part of the way to do it is like, hey, maybe I thought maybe, Skylar Thompson's really bad and he gets benched, but he was playing pretty good before his finger got hurt. Skull Actuary said that Miami wide receivers get more rushing touchdowns than the running backs, and their running backs get more receiving touchdowns than the wide receivers. They did not get any non-Mike Gesicki touchdowns, if I recall. So, nope, didn't get there. Caleb Cook says that every player that scores for the Vikings went to college in Florida. We did not get there. You got a touchdown from Irv Smith, a score on a two-pointer. Oh, no, a touchdown and a two-pointer from Adam Thielen. Couple of non-Florida guys there. And then a similar one from Kyle Barker, who said that all of the offensive touchdowns would be scored by players drafted in the 7th round or undrafted. And again, no, because of Irv Smith. Dalvin Cook got one. Mike Gesicki got 2. He was a first rounder, right? He may have been a second rounder, but he wasn't undrafted for sure. So we did not get there. A couple got close this week, but we're falling back away. We had the Saints game. We had a couple get like dangerously close. And we've gotten a little bolder since then, which I love. Always get a little bolder. That's life advice to you. Please don't take it out of context. Let's move on to the bye week bold predictions. I've never done these for a bye week before, and I figured opening it up to the rest of the NFL, to the rest of sports, would be pretty fun. The first one comes from Darn Many, who says that this will be the last game for 3 coaches, head or coordinator. You did not specify a sport, so I will say if there are 3 high-profile staff firings, I'll give you head coach or coordinator. I'll give you a baseball manager, which would be kind of funny if like some catastrophe happens somewhere in the playoffs. I don't follow baseball at all. I don't know if there's any hot seat stuff going on, but I'll give you that out, right? I'll give you college and the NFL, of course. So this will be the last game for at least 3 coaches will occur between the time I record this, which is late Thursday night, and probably a week from to next Thursday night. 3 head coach firings this will need to have been the last game coached by 3 different people. Sports tweeter Matthias said that 3 safeties will happen across the league, all in the first quarter. Sure, man, we are in like an offensive rut. And the reason for that, most people agree that it's like because every defense is playing a lot more too high safety, and I don't think offenses have their too high safety beaters well protected or well drilled, and they would rather just dink and dunk underneath, and that's just making things less explosive. So there's less scoring, there's less fun stuff going on all over the league. So 3 safeties across the league would be like the extreme of that. So sure, 3 safeties across the league, all of them happening in the first quarter. Yeah, I think I have to hold you to the first quarter because 3 safeties across all games in a week wouldn't be bold enough, I think, otherwise. Squeaks says that every NFL underdog wins. I absolutely love it. Let's see what the hardest one. I'm going to bet online right now and checking the odds, what the hardest one to hit there would be. Panthers are plus 13 against Tampa. It's got to be that, right? Yeah. The Panthers plus 13 against Tampa. I believe that that line has moved. I'm recording this not long after Christian McCaffrey was traded, but I have to think that that's already incorporated. I would think BetOnline's pretty on top of that stuff. So plus 13 Panthers would be the hardest one, but obviously, like sometimes the hard one is you get a 1 point. Broncos are home underdogs by a point. Oh, wow, that's interesting. Broncos are home underdogs by a point. I kind of like that for you, betcha, over the Jets. And that's interesting. I couldn't never bring myself to bet on the Broncos, actually. Never mind. But that you can get some like on the closer games can almost be harder, right? But of course, like harder to predict, right? But Panthers plus 13, every NFL underdog wins. Now, you said wins outright. I'm not giving you a spread on this. Waka Waka said Packers, Lions, and Bears lose by 10, 23, and 22 respectively on 10-23-22, October 23rd, 2022. I will not hold you to the order here. It's bold enough with just saying that the Packers, Lions, and Bears all lose, but those margins all need to be represented by one of them, right? 10, 23, and 22 somewhere. I love the gumption of that. I love how weird it is. And I love that we were predicting a three-way loss for the Packers, Lions, and Bears. This can be a very good week for the Vikings, right? If go Patriots, go Commanders, maybe go Cowboys. I actually kind of feel like go Lions over go Cowboys as I talked it out. So we'll stick with that. And finally, Daniel Hagan said that before next Thursday, a player or coach on the Rams makes a comment as to how they are missing Kevin O'Connell, the true brains behind their Super Bowl offense. Okay, so here's the thing. If this comment happens, I'm going to need your help to point it out to me because I am not going to watch all media of the Rams for this. I'm not that plugged into the Rams, but I'm sure if something like that happens, we'll be all over it as Vikings fans, right? If there is a mention of Kevin O'Connell. So what you need to do, you can make this one happen. You can go reach out to an LA beat reporter and say, hey, we had this idea that Kevin O'Connell's actually like the key, especially if the Rams the Rams aren't playing, right? They're on a bye, aren't they? Yeah, the Rams are on a bye. So this would make it even more bold. But either way, reach out to an LA Rams reporter. You can find him on Twitter, right? Just send a DM and say, hey, we had this idea that Kevin O'Connell's actually was the secret to fixing the Rams. You know, of course, everybody knew it was McVay. McVay had that great 2018 season, but then he kind of got solved by Bill Belichick. Missed the playoffs in 2019. He made the playoffs in 2020, but he was kind of an also-ran. Kind of didn't feel like the Rams were true contenders that year. They kind of were just there. And then, you know, they bring in Kevin O'Connell, and they brought in O'Connell in 2020, I believe, right? And that, you know, took them a bit to get going. But then 2021, you saw the offense really explode. You saw the Rams really regain their form. They won the Super Bowl, and then O'Connell leaves, and then they're back. They're looking like their 2019 selves again. So I don't know. Maybe you think, what's the maybe the real secret sauce to fixing the McVay offense after NFL defensive coordinators caught up to what he was doing in 2018? Maybe it was the big, tall former backup quarterback. Maybe it was Kevin O'Connell. You know, maybe you should ask about that. Whoever covers the Rams. I don't want to call out anybody by name. Please don't harass people on my behalf. But you could make this happen. And if you could get someone to ask that question, you might get the quote you need. So while it is very bold because they are on bye, and that would be a very weird thing to say, especially coming off of like a 3-score win against the Panthers, right? Or 2-score win against the Panthers coming into the bye. So it's not like they're feeling that bad about themselves. But it's not the bold prediction segment for nothing. All right, I'll see you all next week. We won't have games to break down really, but we'll try to find some other evergreen stuff to talk about what's going on in the league and all that stuff. So I will see you all then. And as always, Skull.